My name is Felix Njofi, and this is still another continuity of my video, Standing Up for Freedom and Racist, Royal Family, UK. I have a question for this country. Once there were good people of this country that did realize that the royal family, they have a history of mental illness, and they did get rid of them. What I don't understand is, why would they get rid of them and let them in the country? If they were good, there was no reason to get rid of them. And to confirm that they have a history of mental illness, how can you get rid of somebody that is not good? The country don't need them, and they still get back to the country to frustrate the country. We know the woman that was killed in this country, killed in France by the royal family in this country. That is set her up to be killed in France. No human being should be killed like this woman was killed. The reason why this woman was killed is because he was married to a terrorist royal family, which they have a history of mental illness. And the husband was having an affair with another woman. And the husband wanted the woman to take it, to accept that he is having an affair and live with her, and live with him like that. But because the woman couldn't accept this, because the man is suffering with mental illness, he couldn't understand that it's not right for him to marry and be having an affair with another woman, and marry a woman and want the woman to accept that because he's suffering with the mental illness, they have to set the woman to be killed. And this country, nobody stand up to stop them. If the country is run by people that have a history of mental illness, they will make the country run the same way. They will make people sick. So the question now, you have the answer. Either get rid of the terrorists like you did before for peace and freedom, or you let the terrorists keep destroying your life. They will set camera on you, watching you 24 hours. You have no privacy. When they call this country, they say this country is great. What is great in it if you have camera 24 hours watching you in and out by the royal family terrorists that are suffering with mental illness? Do we not have any better hospital in this country to help them? What is wrong with the world? Watch this video. It will help. You have the answer to the question. If you want freedom and peace and be great, you have the answer to the question. Thank you for watching. Bye.
You believed you found your prince.
And I suppose in love.
Of course.
Whatever in love means.
And he turns out to be a cheater.
There were lots of things that the French police did that really are inexplicable.
This fairy tale was not going to have the happy ending. There will never be another Princess Diana.
I really could feel a searing pain in my chest, and I thought, it's very heartbreaking.
Mohammed Al Fayed has indicated that what happened in Paris amounted to murder.
It was really like a great big fog had descended over Britain and no one could speak. Men in suits would be openly crying and carrying flowers because Diana was dead.
The shocking allegations about Princess Diana's death. Authorities now reviewing the new and sensational claim that she was actually murdered by the British government. ABC's chief legal affairs anchor here with more on that, Dan Abrams. And Dan, talk about a conspiracy theory.
Oh, yeah. Look, this may be the most thoroughly investigated car crash ever. But when you're talking about the death of Princess Diana, it seems some will never accept the official finding. After all, attributing her death to negligence, mistakes, bad behavior isn't nearly as tantalizing as a claim of murder.
It seemed like a terrible accident and was officially ruled just that, an accident caused by, among other things, the gross negligence of driver Henri Paul. But now Scotland Yard is looking into a new claim that Princess Diana and her boyfriend Dodi Fayed were actually murdered by British Special Forces 16 years ago this month.
Whenever you bring in stories about Special Forces personnel, then immediately you've got the prospect of a red-hot story.
The allegation came in the form of a letter during a court-martial of Sergeant Danny Nightingale, a British Special Air Service sniper convicted of illegal gun possession. The letter alleged that a fellow Special Ops soldier told his wife their unit orchestrated the princess's death and cover-up.
They had a team of people over there on motorbikes, designing, planning the whole operation, waiting with cars, etc. So the car would be driven down at speed, driven by motorbikes to get them at high speed, driven into the tunnel, and the strobe light then would be used to disorientate ordinary Paul, so he'd lose control of the car.
A new book said to be published next week by author Alan Power also claims the British government had Diana killed because they saw her as a threat.
Hello and welcome. The night Princess Diana died, one of Britain's most prominent and controversial Arab businessmen also lost his son, and a decade on he's still looking for answers. In their last hours together, Diana, Princess of Wales, and Dodi Al Fayed left the Ritz Hotel in Paris, heading out to the back door to avoid the waiting paparazzi and crowds. Their chauffeured car raced through the city, pursued by photographers, and ended up slamming into a pillar in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. Dodi Al Fayed and the driver were killed instantly, Princess Diana a few hours later in hospital. But despite numerous inquests into the events of that night in August 1997, many questions remain unanswered. And later this year, yet another investigation is due to be launched in London. Dodi's father, Mohammed Al Fayed, hopes that finally he may find some closure. But will the full story ever be revealed? But don't forget, we want your questions and comments, and you can contact us through the details on your screen. But joining me now to talk about the inquest he says were flawed and his own relentless effort to bring what he calls overdue justice is Mohammed Al Fayed. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
I have to start by asking you, with your ongoing battle over this closure that you need on Dodi's death. It's coming up to the 10th anniversary now. Are you still totally convinced that this was a plot by the British security services and perhaps the involvement of the royal family?
I think myself that you believe that what happened to my son and to Princess Diana is absolute, clear, horrendous murder committed by the British royal family.
So what line of inquiry are you pursuing now? Considering it's been 10 years, many inquests have been held and so far no results in your favor. What line of inquiry are you pursuing now?
As you know, I'm fighting to find the truth. And the power I am fighting, as you know, this is basically an organized crime by the British intelligence service, ordered by the head of the British royal family, Prince Philip. And as you know, Prince Philip is a person, Nazi at the core, German origin, grew up with Hitler, general. He'd been taken when he was 6 years old from his parents, who one of them was crazy, one was completely alcoholic, and brought up by his auntie who married Hitler, general. You want a bloody guy like that, ruling this country behind the scene, grow up with the Nazi, will accept my son to be the stepfather of the future king. There's no way.
But sir, of course,
he's well-known racist at the core, you know.
Well, sir, of course, you obviously have no love for the British royal family, judging by what you say, and it's obviously your opinion and a strong opinion. But obviously, what the inquests and the courts are asking for is evidence that there is involvement.
Yeah, but if you are fighting state apparatus, official terrorist organization like MI6, who have executed the murder, you think it's easy? They are above the law. There's official secret act. Above the law, you can't just, you know, I'm fighting the proof, which will come definitely from the French court, which I'm fighting in the last 10 years, that prove that the blood of the driver, Henry Paul, is not Henry Paul. And now the two major professors who've been in charge, the pathologists, under criminal investigation. And if it is proved that the blood of Henry Paul is not blood Henry Paul, and that's the proof, that's enough, you know. And definitely the British and, you know, the intelligence service work together, help each other. The French intelligence have organized and helped the British intelligence to execute this murder, because Henry Paul, he was working for me as a deputy security in the Ritz Hotel in Paris. He was involved, he was working for the French intelligence and the British intelligence in the same time.
Sir,
and he been duped,
Sir, I was going to ask you, if obviously all this is weighted against you, if, as you say, the security forces are working in collusion and there is a major cover-up at the top level, it doesn't really leave you without much hope. So I wonder what you expect to come out of the inquiry, the new public inquest that's due to take place later this year.
Yeah, it's already, I'm fighting, already there is an inquest, and the inquest definitely, they have documents, they have tapes recording. Diana kept a letter of threats from Prince Philip and Prince Charles. It's a lot of documentation which the coroner has to deliver to my lawyer.
Do you have any expectation you will get that? Do you expect to get that at all? Do you expect to see any of the notes?
They had to deliver that. I've been winning basically all the time against their wish, trying to cover up. And at the end, I'm certain, I believe in God, and I'm sure at the end I will expose those gangster and official terrorists, you know,
would you expect,
who have murdered my son and Princess Diana.
Mr. Al-Fayed, would you expect at all there would be any chance? I mean, isn't it too far-fetched to expect that Prince Philip and Princess Charles would appear as witnesses?
They had to appear because they are not above the law, and Prince Philip too.
Let's see what, we asked a few people.
If they really believe that they're living in democracy, they had to appear.
Well, sir, we went to...
Welcome back. You're watching Gravitas with me, Rohit Gandhi. 37 historians at the University of Warwick in the UK recently published a statement voicing their concerns surrounding racism in Britain, particularly since the Brexit vote in June last year. As many of you may recall, during the British referendum to leave the European Union, there was an ugly anti-immigration tone to the pro-Brexit campaign. And after the Brexit vote, there was a spike in racist abuse. That's our focus for the next half hour. But before that, take a look at this report by WION's London Bureau Chief, Mandy Clark, which looks at racism post-Brexit.
The message during the referendum was clear. Immigration is Britain's biggest problem. And after the vote, there was a spike in racist abuse across the UK. A group of teens threatened to beat up a black man on a bus in Manchester, while others, like student Nalan Dissanake, tried to make light of the situation. But anti-hate campaigner Jeff Arnold says Brexit hate crimes are no joke.
In the 2 weeks after Brexit, what we saw was a lot of the language actually changing and making specific references to the Leave campaign and to the actual result itself. We had a British Asian female who was targeted, along with the children that she had with her, targeted by a man who again made specific references to Brexit. You need to leave the effing country. He then spat at the victim.
Official figures of 31 police forces from across the UK show a rise of reported hate crimes of 41% after the Brexit vote. But that's not the true figure, because many victims of racial or religious abuse will choose never to report it. People on the streets of London say they don't support violence, but some do see immigration as an issue.
They're getting the wrong time in. Sorry, that is it. And I think they should stop it altogether now.
I think it's just a scare tactic, really, to say that it's immigration that is hurting our schools and our NHS and that kind of thing.
The Brexit vote has left the country divided, but many hope that tolerance will prevail. Mandy Clark, WION, London.
Let me go across to Mandy Clark, our London Bureau Chief, on this. Mandy, you live in London. Is racism, anti-immigrant sentiment visible today?
Absolutely. You did notice a sudden spike in people almost feeling that it justified racism, that it was okay to say certain things that were never okay to say in society, where, you noticed, especially particularly ethnic minorities, people with visibly not British, and also the Polish community has been noticeably targeted. You see people openly having these conversations about the issue of immigrants in particular and immigration.
Mandy, I remember before the pre-Brexit debate, one of the challenges was the Eastern Europeans that had come across into England, and that was one of the biggest challenges. But there are a tremendous amount of South Asians there as well, a lot of them from India, in fact. Explain to us the racism that may exist when it comes to South Asians, or is that a different story?
I think anyone who, I think everyone is being tarred with the same brush, and it's highly unfortunate because many South Asians, you know, they are well educated. They're here to contribute to the National Health Service. So that's one of the biggest contributing factors they provide. They are adding to the economy, and economists always say Britain needs immigrants to help the country run, but there is this minority who feel like they've been left out of the development of Britain, and they can't find jobs, and they just see any people who are not of their ethnicity, who are in employment, as taking jobs that they could have got. So there is this dynamic where Britain desperately needs, you know, South Asians and other immigrants to help run the country, whereas there's this minority of people who might feel left out of it and blame them for taking the jobs.
That's always been a challenge in the West, to keep the minimum wage low. They always need immigrants, they always need people. But when those immigrants land there, then that's too many immigrants. And Mandy, stay with me on this. I'll come back to you for more inputs on this story. Mandy spoke with British Indian Member of Parliament and a leading UK industrialist, Lord Karan Belemoria, on the subject. Let's listen in to what he said.
I think that what has happened as a result of what I call the wretched referendum, the hate crime and the racism is real. I personally, for 3 decades, never experienced any racism in Britain. I've received numerous amounts of racism, hate crimes, tweets, emails, letters, and people hide behind tweets. I receive letters which are openly signed with the person's name, with their address, and saying things like, you have no right to speak, you're a foreigner, you weren't born here, you and your lot, go back to India, and much worse than that.
Racial inequality is getting worse in the United Kingdom, with young black people and ethnic minorities suffering institutional racism and unfairness in the fields of education, employment and the criminal justice system, according to a human rights group. The Inequality or Equality and Human Rights Commission, EHRC, in its latest report that race was the motive in 82% of hate crimes recorded in England and Wales, with the two nations witnessing an unprecedented spike since Britain voted to leave the European Union on June 23rd. Global Affairs analyst Professor Joe Ukemenam joins us from London to discuss this. Good evening and thanks for joining us.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yes, now when we say racial inequality is getting worse, it leaves an impression that it was always there, but Brexit has made it even worse. How bad is it really after Brexit?
Well, it is frighteningly bad, because we have a situation where cases, up to 70 cases, are being reported on a daily basis.
Of attempt by the new government of, British government, of course, Theresa May, to give a sense of security for foreigners, including Nigerians, of course.
Well, the problem is that when it comes to the issue of racism, the government is always the last to react, because they will sit back and want to put together some empirical scientific evidence, which is in turn will inform policy and possibly law. So the government is notoriously slow in taking actions in that. But what you get is black activists who, like myself, who will go on the top of the mountain and shout as loud as we can in order to be heard, or in order to deter prospective offenders. In terms of employment, in terms of you mentioned institutional racism. Institutional racism is more difficult, it's slower to permeate. But what is frightening is when you cannot walk the streets of London without constantly looking behind your back to see whether there is one square head who may come out of the woodwork to start shouting needless abuses to yourself. But the thing is that black people themselves have not assisted the process, because during the time we were campaigning for this, I was in charge, recruited to campaign amongst the people whose background are from the Commonwealth. And my experience in that is that I find astonishing that black people themselves are the ones who are campaigning for Britain to exit Europe. And two reasons they give. One, they say because the Eastern Europeans are coming to take their jobs, are coming to take their houses. And I said, what? I couldn't believe my ears. But that was the case. And that resulted in so many of them voting for Britain to depart from Europe. And they were under misguided understanding that the British white racist is only going to target the European whites and not them who have secured their permanent stay or, in any event, a British passport. But they do not know that racism is colorblind in that case.
And one day they're just going to come together and say, you know, we've had enough of you. This is our country now, and they get to make the rules.
There are different ways that the government, the police and British institutions can deal with people considered radical. De-radicalise them, arrest them, control them, recruit them, silence them. So what does each involve? What works and what might backfire? I've been examining each of these measures, asking which are successful and speaking to the people subject to them. They have views that many consider offensive, but that's why they're called radical.
Traditional far-right groups, they might say, it's the Muslims, it's the Jews. We understand that it's about a global economic system.
And what do you want Britain to look like? What's the ideal Britain?
Should be a white Britain.
Benjamin Raymond is 26 and spokesperson for a new far-right group called National Action.
The source of all of the conflict in society is the fact that these different racial groups have been brought here. They've been brought here to create a people who are deracinated, and therefore they're more easy to control.
What does deracinated mean?
Deracinated means you have no sense of roots and no sense of identity.
Do you accept that your views are racist?
Of course.
You're a happy, comfortable racist?
I'm comfortable.
You're a comfortable racist?
That's the whole point. That is the whole point.
How long have you lived in Bognor?
I'm a right-wing candidate, and you throw racist at them. Now, they might be racist. In fact, let's assume they are. But they say, no, I'm not, no, I'm not, no, I'm not. That person isn't honest. That person is hiding what their real beliefs are. As a society, this is an endemic problem where people feel the need to suppress what their real views on things are.
Benjamin feels no need to suppress his views. National Action are national socialists with a fancy website but less than 100 members. They try and recruit at universities. Despite the tiny numbers, their openly racist demos mean they've racked up almost 20 arrests. One member, Garen Helm, was sent to prison for an anti-Semitic tweet to an MP.
If you're a National Socialist, you're a Nazi.
So you guys are Nazis?
Yes.
I'm proud?
Yes. Hitler called the strongest man is mightiest when alone.
So you consider Hitler a role model?
Absolutely.
And what are you asking for?
We're asking for a free white Britain.
Who is white?
To it.
And how do you intend to remove the people of colour from Britain?
We're talking about fantasy. We're talking about something that isn't within the realm of the current now.
Well, that's the
For
point,
us, it's
isn't it?
about
Your
moral
ideas are
principles.
fantasy.
We bring the type of people we want together, and we make something that in the future could be a political party.
You think you're better than the other far-right groups?
I would say possibly, yes.
Is that your aim?